when you realize that's what depression is, being completely devoid of play, being completely devoid of any joy in your life, humor, comedy, art, flirtation, like all of these things that are inherently playful. When you have an absence of that, that's depression.
Hello, welcome back to the podcast with me, Chris, and today I have Darryl Edwards, goes by the name of Fitness Explorer on Instagram, and Primal Play Official. So Primal Play is his website also. You can head there to find out more about Darryl, and links in the description, including his TED Talk. I would urge you to go watch that. It is a powerful episode on TEDx. So why have I got Darryl on? Well, he ticks an incredible amount of boxes in the categories of this podcast of what I really want to promote and push in terms of people's missions. We explore his health journey, first of all, why he's doing the things he's doing today, what things he's discovered along the journey, and then we just dive into all things play, all things kids, nurture, health, like what is important, what is crucial, and what's going to make the difference in our longevity and vitality as humans. I really appreciate Darryl coming on. I think he's an incredible guy with some great things to say on the topic, and he's making moves in the world of health and well-being, so really appreciate him coming on. Again, please hit that subscribe button, would appreciate that. If you find it valuable, then please even more so hit that subscribe button, so then it would help me put this out to more people like yourself, so that will be helpful. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you devour this conversation and share it to anyone that you feel called to. Thank you. Enjoy the episode. A calling or a call to action or a change or I know your health journey was, we can start there. Perhaps like what shifted for you, what real like moment in your life that really shifted you to really zone in on those core values?
Yeah, I've always, from a very young age, and initially being told by my parents, sort of 4 years old, you're going to be Dr. Edwards. I remember having this conversation, this back and forth. And my mother especially was like, that's what's going to happen. And I said, well, how does that happen? What do I need to do, Mom? And she said, you need to have an interest in biology and the sciences, and it probably would help you if you know some Latin. What's that? It'd probably help if you could pass your 11 plus and go to a grammar school. I'll try. But that conversation at sort of 3 to 4 years old, and me at that age working towards that goal, I had an interest in the sciences pretty much on that basis. I had a reading age of about 8 years old at 4. Just demolished books, just absolutely craved reading, and anything that was factual. Actually, I wasn't really into fiction. I really wanted to find out about the facts about the world and human beings and how we lived. And when I passed my 11 plus and went to grammar school and considered continuing on that journey, and I was the only kid at primary school to pass 11 plus. It was all these accolades. It was like, this is all going to happen. It's all happening. Until my mother decides to bring home a home computer when I was about 10 years old for Christmas, and I remember saying, Mom, that's not the one I wanted. That's got some keyboard thing, because I wanted a games console. And she bought a home computer, and you could type into it, and that typing was actually programming. And so I started to to program at a very young age, and I realized computer science was my passion. I didn't know what computer science was, but that was the academic subject that I wanted to pursue. And I suppose the reason I mention this is because that was the first significant shift of me realizing, one, I'm going to have to disappoint the parents because I want to do something else with my life. But I had this innate desire to explore and to be creative and to be playful, and I wanted a vocation that would enable that to happen. So I went to university, did study computer science, became a programmer, worked for software houses, got headhunted into finance, worked for investment banks, became very successful.
So did they honor that?
Did they honor?
Was there resistance, or were they like? Okay.
Always resistance. When I was my most successful, I remember saying to my mother, "See, Mom, imagine if I was Dr. Edwards, I wouldn't be as successful as I am now." And she went, "But you're still not Dr. Edwards." so she was like, "I don't care. I don't care what else you've done. I don't care what else you've achieved. You're not Dr. Edwards." So no, she was never, she wasn't completely happy, but she was extremely proud of what I did and my achievements. But I know deep down, she's kind of like, I wanted you to live my dream. That's what I wanted to do, but I didn't have the opportunities you have. So why aren't you doing what I've told you to do? But I suppose it's all important because within that environment of investment banking, I encountered some health issues and asked questions again, like, well, why is this happening to me at such a young age? And I didn't realize that my health wasn't just governed by, the factors of what I consume, how I look, healthy food, a bit of exercise. It was also the working environment that I was in. It was also being a chronic insomniac, sleep deprived, only focusing on my work, minimizing the importance of my social relationships because it was about the money. And so when you're told in your mid-30s that you're pre-diabetic, you have problems with your heart, blood pressure, you're kind of chronic hypertensive, you have a poor lipid profile, so we need to kind of keep a track of your triglycerides and your cholesterol, and you need medication for that. And I was suffering a lot of back pain, low back pain, and chronic back pain. So when you're just kind of being thrown all of these health maladies, and you're given these solutions which are managing the symptoms, that was another light bulb moment of like, oh, I don't understand enough about this because I didn't become a doctor. That was the first. Secondly, the success that I've garnered working with investment banking and having access to private doctors, that's not helping me either. There's no real solution with this. And I remember saying to my doctor, well, I'm sure exercise can help with managing my blood pressure, right? And he said, yes. And I went, so is it worthwhile me pursuing that? Yes, but you're still going to have to take these meds. So I got a bit of a reprieve. I said, okay, can I just change my lifestyle for the next few weeks, few months, until I need to take my bloods again and see what happens? And he was like, okay, yeah, we'll keep a close eye on you. And lo and behold, 30 days later, 60 days later, bloods are retested and things started to look better, things started to improve. And I started to consider, well, hey, I'm exercising now. Maybe I should be focusing on the fuel for my physical activity too. And then when I got this clean bill of health, like actually you're off the danger list, you're not even on the amber list anymore, you're pretty much completely in the green with all of your health markers, just continue to do what you're doing. I decided I had to find out more about this. I had to find out why physical activity was facilitating this process of improving my physical health. I wanted to know why and what the research would say about this. So my doctor was talking about, maybe you would be an interesting case study, and maybe I should have a look at this with my patients. And I said, well, what can you explain a little bit more about that? And he spoke to me about research, and I was like, oh, I had no idea. I had absolutely no idea that this was occurring. So can you forward those papers on to me? Can you forward those articles on to me? Sure, Mr. Edwards. So that just kind of sparked this interest in exercise physiology and me focusing on improving my health initially, but also realizing maybe I could do this as a vocation. Maybe that aspect of me helping other people, which I would have got being a doctor, maybe this is how I can earn the right to work in that field based on what I enjoy doing, which at that time was movement. I was like, okay, I've got this love affair with movement, and I want to share this. I want to tell the whole world about this,
Mm-hmm.
but I want to be able to do this in a way where it's not just sort of inspirational, but beneficial for those who I'm communicating with. So
Mm-hmm.
that was pretty much my arc from the very sedentary, office bound, desk bound, avoiding sleep at any opportunity just to get the work done, highly stressed, Snickers bars and Red Bull for breakfast. I could go on. There were lots of things that
very
weren't
common, very
helpful.
common, isn't it? As you
Yeah,
know, it's
yeah, yeah.
it's amazing you had that kind of foresight or like sense to question it and be like, okay, this doesn't define me or my future. Like, how can I learn more about this? And something wasn't resonating with you, whether you pick up on energy or whatever it is. I get the feeling you had like this sense of like, okay, what you're saying it's not the full picture, or like the way in
Yeah,
it gets delivered, because we all know that story of going to the doctor and they don't ask you anything about your sleep, your nutrition, and they just hand you out the prescription, and it's they're essentially a drug dealer, and they've been taught away,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it's come to common knowledge now, and that's just how that system works. It's sick care. It doesn't
yeah,
really tackle
yeah,
those kind of fundamentals of health. That's what so many people are going
yeah.
holistically.
Very true, very true. And I kind of I think even within that journey of and the reason you asked why I
Mm-hmm.
had that foresight, and to be honest, I don't think I had foresight. I was just scared of the pills. I was scared of the side effects. So I asked those questions. I was like, okay, tell me what the side effects would be. And my doctor told me, and I was like, okay, well, that doesn't sound great.
Yeah, they're not side effects. That's a marketing term. They're direct effects.
Yeah, it's like, whoa, that sounds alarming. How long will I be on these meds for? Well, pretty much forever.
Yeah.
Okay, whoa. So it doesn't actually fix the problem. No. You're gonna have to be on these, dependent on these for life. So I was just like, there's got to be another way, surely. And I did say to my doctor, again, I want to be very transparent here. I didn't say to my doctor, there's no way I'm going to be taking those drugs, big pharma. No, that I wasn't that person. The person I was like, as soon as you tell me this no longer works, if you tell me it doesn't work and you need these meds, I would have taken them. I would have accepted that. But I was given this opportunity. And thinking with my sort of systems hat on, my sort of process-based, engineering-based hat on, I can see why that system works in that way. You know, here's a problem that we've identified. There's a set of conditions associated with that, right? The research has been conducted, and we know for the majority of people who have these issues that are prescribed this, they'll be able to maintain a certain quality of life, and will decrease the acceleration of the decline. You know, that rate of decline will kind of slow that down, and we can hopefully. And so, you know, you go in, you say, hey, I'm suffering from this. They compute, right? They look at it, they go, oh, yeah. You've got this, and this. This is what you need. Are you happy? Yes. Okay, but here you go, right? And if there's any problems, come back and we'll review. So I think that process works extremely well when it works. But it's incomplete, right? As we know, it's incomplete because they aren't necessarily knowing much about you at all. You know, they're not asking you what you eat. They may pay lip service. Hey, you know, have you thought about improving your diet? Okay, what would you recommend? You know, improve your diet. Okay, thank you. You know, what about exercise?
Yeah, I mean,
exercise.
You go on the NHS website and it's still very 90s science, and it's just quite outdated now, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, and I think it's difficult. It's difficult to be, because it's difficult to be as prescriptive, right? When you're dealing with certain maladies where there's still so much difference of opinion around lifestyle interventions, where maybe I need to be safer, right? The safer bet is to say, can you give me the pill? The safer bet is, I'm going to write this down and tell you to take this twice a day. The more complex answer is, we need to spend more time focusing on you, looking at your life, looking at some of the decisions you make, empowering you to make better decisions. All of those things take a significant amount of time. Yeah. They're very complicated. They're very challenging, because behavioral change, and that's probably one of the things that I really have understood working in this new way, and having many clients over the years, and realizing the challenges that people face. Even if our doctors said, I've got this problem. Oh, Mr. Edwards, right, you've got high blood pressure. Well, you do know if you improved your diet by doing this, and this, that would help. Oh, really? Yes. You do know if you actually drank some more water and you weren't just drinking fizzy drinks and blah, 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 that would also help. Okay, great. You do know that if you exercise and you did X number of minutes per day, that would help to bring your blood pressure down. Okay, oh, great. You're only sleeping 4 hours a night. If you slept 8 hours a night, that alone would help improve your blood pressure. Boom. Okay, you're chronically stressed with the work that you do. Is there any way that you could, work around? Okay, right. Mr. Edwards, if you do all of these things, you will manage your blood pressure. You would improve your cholesterol. You would, improve your blood glucose levels. That would happen. The danger with that is, right, which sounds great on paper. It sounds absolutely incredible. This really simple way of you taking control and managing better health for yourself. The problem with that is humans find it really difficult to modify their behavior, because it isn't as simple as just following a list of instructions, no matter how complete they are. So I've kind of changed how I feel about, let's just swap out the medicinal pharmaceutical approach to a prescriptive lifestyle, to manage sickness, to this more natural, alternative, very prescriptive approach. Because what happens then is many people feel as if they're failing at implementing many of these things which are really simple, because it isn't a binary decision for humans. We have all of these nuances. So you say to somebody, you just need to exercise 30 minutes a day. That's all you did. If you did that, you'd reduce, all-cause mortality by up to 50%. That's the official research. That's the headline research. If you do 30 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity, cardiovascular activity, you would improve reduce your risk of diabetes, cardiovascular disease, various cancers. The list goes on. That's all you need to do. 30 minutes a day. Yeah, I can do that. What sort of exercise? These exercises will do that for you. What do you like doing? I'd like doing exercise. Yeah. All of those work. 9 out of 10 people who you would give that instruction to would not complete that 30 minutes a day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And not just because they're lazy, not just because.
I don't think laziness is a thing. It's a funny one, isn't it? It's a funny one.
Yeah.
What we associate laziness with, but where does it comes from? Somewhere. Laziness is almost a symptom of like a deeper rooted thing. This is what I want to get into anyway. Like how in your work have you seen the most effect of like going from that like well described situation, which likely is a common occurrence for so many people. I know it was for my dad, and I can name 5 people that I know, maybe more. This is a very common occurrence. It's okay, your lifestyle isn't conducive to you living a long time. There's going to be some really high markers of death, essentially. So how do we prevent this, and how do we change your lifestyle, change your life? And that's what my journey has definitely been about. This is a lifestyle. It's not like there are no quick fixes, and there's no like easy route. There's no short. The path of least resistance generally isn't the one that's gonna bring the most fulfillment or generally work.
Exactly.
Yeah, but it's like this is a really amazing crossroads in the conversation, because it's how do we, I guess, as people in this kind of industry, help people, and what have you seen the most effects, like, and the most kind of engagement with, like, how you get people to get the results essentially? And I know you speak to stuff that I speak to around like looking through things at an evolutionary lens, and to primal play, and it's all of that. So if you could kind of dive into that.
I think if you understand, so evolutionary biology sort of tells us where we came from, what the conditions were in terms of our evolution, and what the mismatches are today in the 21st century. And some of those mismatches we know are detrimental to health. So if I decide I don't want to stay awake during the day, I'd rather be awake all night. If I just made that decision and I had 8 hours of sleep a day, I still had the prerequisite, the recommendation of 8 hours of sleep, good quality sleep during the day, I would still suffer like night shift workers, right? So night shift workers have an increased risk of all sorts of ailments, even when they've been doing it for a long time. So they've been able to adjust. They've been able to have good quality sleep, with eye masks on and whatever, right? They've learned to adjust, but their bodies don't really adjust, right? Their bodies don't adjust to them not getting adequate sunlight. Their bodies don't adjust to pretty much their circadian rhythm being turned upside down. So it's important for us, I believe, to be aware of some of these mismatches, to be aware of some of these requirements for health which are aligned with our evolution. And so that it does include, movement versus being sedentary. So we evolved to move in a variety of ways. In the 21st century, we've devolved to become sedentary in many respects, and so there's an impact to our health. And the same with nutrition, right? If we have many modern versions of and variants of food choices, as our majority of our food intake, we pay the price. So many of those listening, of course, for you and I, we kind of understand the importance of looking at this environment and evolutionary mismatch, and being aware of what within our environment today can impact our health positively or negatively. So movement is my main focus. Out of all of the sort of pillars of health, movement is the most important to me. One, I'm most passionate about it. Two, it was my gateway to improving my health. And secondly, I'm aware of the benefits of not only physically, but emotionally and mentally having a decent movement prescription. So I believe movement is medicine. However, there's this challenge of, even when you believe it yourself, even when you're knowledgeable about something, even when you're passionate about it, it doesn't mean you do it. So the reason we don't do it is also because of evolution. Because evolution tells us to conserve energy, to seek out convenience, to not do something unless you really have to do it. This is also part of our DNA. And if our environment tells us you're hungry, you need to get some food, and you've got to expend a serious amount of calories to get that food, and that's your only choice, what do? If I don't listen to that choice, if I don't listen to that decision that's been made for me, and I go, no, I don't want to do that, then I'm going to die. I'm going to starve, right? If I listen and I go, yeah, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to do the hard work to get some food because I'm hungry. Okay, again, yes, again. Oh, I don't really want to do this, but I have to. Okay, I've got no choice. It's about my survival. So movement is completely synchronized with our survival, whether it's procreation, whether it's celebration, whether it's a rite of passage, whether it's like seeking out, our mother's breast when we're feeding as an infant, like all of that mechanism is based on movement, everything, right? So that's what I feel many people in the fitness industry, in the physical activity industry, they miss that point, which is exercise is a modern construct.
You don't see animals lifting weights.
Yeah, exactly. They don't make a decision to move because they go, I'm deconditioned. I am not doing the sort of movement I should be doing normally. So let me create this kind of substrate of activities, of physical activities, to be a substitute, to be a proxy for what I should be doing. Animals don't make that decision. They make the decisions to move, usually based on, I need to, right? I want to play. I want to play chase, right? I want to chase because I want prey, right? I need to migrate because it's the only way, thousands of miles, it's the only way I'm going to be able to find a mate, right? Or to get out of this cold climate, or whatever it is, right? There's these evolutionary drivers, instinctive drivers. So as humans, we forget that layer of what is part of our innate being. And so when we're having conversations with people, when we're trying to encourage them to move more, to motivate them to move more, to tell them it's really great, and we give them all of this education, we miss out the piece which is saying, every time I tell you to move more, your body's going, why? I don't understand. What do you mean move more? Yeah, move more because it's good for you. Well, it's pretty good for me just doing nothing. Sitting here doing nothing feels really good. And it does, right? And that's the reason why in the short term, when we stop moving, we don't feel physical pain. We don't feel awful. We feel great. we feel great. You know, when I sit in my really comfortable armchair, I feel freaking fantastic. When I'm playing my Xbox and going, wow, this is, I'm not going, hey, Darryl, you need to get up and do 20 jumping jacks because that's better for you. Like, no, it feels absolutely great to do so. I'm in this rested state, right? So normally we would be in this rested state because we've done some significant amount of labor, right? We went out today, we went to hunt for some food, we found some food, fantastic, we brought it back, it's been prepared, we feasted on it. Now we can relax. But actually, no, I don't even want to relax. We need to celebrate the fact we actually got that food and we're able to eat it and to show gratitude. So we're going to dance around the fire for the rest of the night. Then you can get some rest. But oh, no, actually, it'd be good for us to make more babies, right? So we're not going to go sleep right away. We're going to make some babies and then we're going to get some rest. And then you're going to wake up in the morning and then you have to do that all again, right? So anyway.
For 200,000 years.
Yeah, 200,000 years, right? Plus, and when you factor in those who preceded us, right? So I think for me with Primal Play, I tried to create this methodology, this system of movement, which inherently recognized this fact. So I have 3 pillars for Primal Play. One which is based on evolutionary biology, one which is based on exercise physiology, and the third which is based on play psychology. So the evolutionary biology used to be just about how did we used to move, what are our movement capabilities, all those different flavors of movement that we should be partaking in, how can I replicate that today? That was my initial kind of first round of thinking about that. And then I actually started thinking about evolutionary psychology and why humans make the decisions they do in terms of this being this driver for convenience. We invented the wheel. Why? Not just because it was a great idea for the sake of it. It was because I don't want to walk, I don't want to walk as far. I don't want to feel as hard as it does. We will tame animals and wild beasts like the horse so they can do the work for us. We went through this process. We did that because of convenience. And so many times we forget about this. That's our almost number one desire is, how can I make this easier? We have this thinking time, this additional thinking time that other mammals don't have, right? So you're like, hey, you know what? When we went on our hunt yesterday, can you imagine like a pack of wolves going, guys, we didn't do great yesterday. Let's sit down and have a bit of a conflab. How are we going to do this better, right? What's our strategy going to be next time? They don't have the advantage of having that conversation.
Yeah.
We do.
Thing is, that was the thing that used to set us apart from our ability to communicate in that way, set us apart from so many other mammals, didn't it? Like, how can we go about this hunt? How can we communicate and work together to, basically create a better life for ourselves? But then that same thing now is actually, it's to our detriment, right?
Is that to our detriment? Yeah, it's gone too far. It's gone too far one way. So with Primal Play, I wanted to acknowledge the reality of saying, just focusing on how our ancestors used to move and trying to replicate that now isn't enough, because we don't want to do that, because we don't have to. So the last pillar of that piece, which was the playful aspect, the play psychology aspect, is looking at human behavior and saying, what is one way of making humans move more? What is one aspect of human behavior tied in to movement, which is just about joy and pleasure and expression? And that's active play. That's playful movement. So, and that exists across the animal kingdom. That isn't unique to humans. So that was something that I wanted to incorporate into what's now the Primal Play method. And by giving people a reward which is inherent, which isn't outcome based, which isn't goal based, but is based on kind of staying within the moment,
Yeah.
and focused on giving ourselves a reason to avoid sedentary lifestyle.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, I now have all of these choices. There's all these things that I can do, and it's purely just about me having fun, or me exploring what I'm capable of doing, and having this almost innocence around exploration, like kids do, like playful, young pups do.
You said in your TED talk, you get the endorphins immediately, not after 60 minutes of running. And
yes,
I thought that was a great statement to make, because it's true. You run because you get that high, but you don't get that high until a grueling 45-minute CrossFit workout or whatever it is. And you're like, oh, and then you get the rush of chemicals. But truly, when you play, that's just exists the whole time. You actually lose sense of time. It's a flow state. It's a complete and synchronicity between what you're doing and the time it takes to do it. It is so fascinating.
It's a completely different state of mind, and the good thing about us talking about the feel good hormones, like endorphins, like serotonin and dopamine and oxytocin, and that all of these hormones are involved with movement to varying degrees. So some of those hormones are, physical activity helps to activate those hormones, like serotonin, for example. So serotonin is secreted, especially in the morning when you're likely to be the most physically active. So you go outside, sunshine also helps to activate serotonin, but so does physical activity. So movement is part and parcel of that. Let's make somebody feel good while moving, right? Oh, okay, that sounds great. Let's give people a drive to want to go for that long walk in the morning to get some food, say, to give them that reason to feel good about building, shelter, right? Dopamine, that risk reward hormone. Again, it's like everything we do is risky. Going to get food, I might become food myself. I might get injured trying to get food, right? I may get injured climbing up a tree looking for a vantage point.
Yeah.
There's all these things that can happen, but the reward is hopefully going to be greater than the calculated risk.
Yeah.
And our body rewards us by taking those actions. Our body goes, hey, here's some dopamine to make you feel better about this, to help you tomorrow when you're thinking, do I really have to get out of the cave today? Yes, you do. Serotonin. Look how great you feel when you go outside of the cave. Wow, sunshine. Wow, life is great, right? Serotonin. Dopamine. Do we really have to walk 8 miles? Do we really have to walk through that dangerous blah, 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 blah section of land, to get that rich bounty of food? Yeah, we do. Oh, it's too dangerous. Yeah, but there's food. Okay, let's take the risk. Let's minimize the risk. Let's calculate the risk. Dopamine. Oxytocin, the bonding hormone, known as also the love hormone, the social hormone. So our interaction, our cooperation, it isn't just about physical touch. It's also about communication, maintaining eye contact, making joint decisions, making collaborative decisions. That's also oxytocin. It helps us make better decisions around how do we improve this hunt, right? How can we bond in the shared experience of hunting? And I'm using hunting a lot, but
someone's hungry.
But it's in anything that enables us to better ourselves through movement.
Yeah.
So whether it's celebration, right? So when we celebrate, we don't tend to, it's not so much fun doing it by ourselves, right? As soon as you're doing that with other people, it helps you to bond. You regenerate more oxytocin. It's a reason why wolves were easy to tame, relatively easy to tame, because they also generate oxytocin with eye contact, by touching, by
Interesting.
patting them and stuff, right? So they generate the same hormones, which is why they bond so well with humans, right? So it's something that we share with much of the animal kingdom, and even if we didn't understand the mechanisms, we know it inherently. And play is one of those things. We remember, yeah, we remember. It's part of our almost our DNA memory. Right? It just exists. So play helps, in my opinion, helps people to find ways to move more, to find ways of movement which are more pleasurable, to hopefully interact with those around them that they love or they would like to love, or they would like to maintain good, healthy relationships, and to play more. And in a play-deprived society, which is one of the mismatches, I would say, in the 21st century, play has become devoid of real fulfillment. Play has become, let's go to Vegas and get smashed. Let's play poker. Let's go out and get hammered. That has become kind of the adult forms of play. Yeah, like the adult playground.
Yeah.
But
or the theme park or something.
Yeah, or theme park, which is, they're great. I love theme parks. I do love my Xbox. I'm not going to lie. People are often surprised when I say you play video games. You sit down and play video games. You're not even standing. No. I'm like, I can't play my games on my Xbox standing. I've tried. It doesn't work as well. I need to be sitting down, being really comfortable. I just need to cut back on the hours, right? That's all I can do.
We'll talk about the metaverse later on, maybe.
But yeah, it's
So one thing I do want to touch on is this. Because I used to think, and I think it depends what you're speaking to, but you can't solve the same problem with the same level it was created with the mind. Essentially, a lot of our thoughts about things influence our choices, which influence our behavior. And Joe Dispenza talks about this incredibly well. So our thoughts about things, but we do have to change our thoughts about things. This is what shifted for me. It was like, oh, this makes sense. I'm learning, I'm reading. This makes sense. How we've evolved to be is not where we are right now. I thought things have radically changed in 50 years, 200 years. Well, it's the environment in which we're in now. Of course, we're having a healthy reaction to a society and an environment which isn't serving us. Shifting that perspective of, of course I don't feel well because I spend 95% of my time indoors, and loads of factors. And I'm eating lots of processed foods. This isn't normal. There's not much nutrition in this food because it's come from here and it's touched how many people, etc. So it has to make sense for us, for me to I do want to go against my survival mechanism, stay indoors and get out there and balance and look silly in front of a load of people. What would be perceived as silly. In the outdoors, and get past also that fear of just wanting to walk and fit in and fit in, and not raise so many socially extreme eyebrows of who the hell is this guy? But I say that because my thoughts around that have changed, being an adult barefoot playing around, my thoughts had to change for my choices to change, for my behavior to change, for them my behavior to create that experience. And then the experience creates the emotion. And it's a beautiful kind of dance between all of that. So it is. Is that where you see most response of the people you speak to about this? Of the thoughts about it are shifting slightly.
I even though we've been talking about the dangers of convenience and shortcuts, I do try to short circuit that process, and so most of the time, people do like to be convinced intellectually, right? But we know that most people want to be convinced through storytelling, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or through experience, something that's experiential. Oh yes,
Yeah.
wow. It's actually, it means something to me now. It wasn't just something that's quite abstract and like, oh yeah, it stimulates me cerebrally, but
Yeah.
I take it or leave it, right? So for me, most people, and I've probably experienced primal play with tens of thousands of people all over the world. And for me, usually it's when we're in the process of doing. That's when people get it. When they feel how they did as a kid,
Mm-hmm.
when they embrace their inner child and go, now I get it. Because most people are so far removed from knowing what it feels like when you were 5 years old or 7 years old. That excite! Oh my God, I'm so excited! You just get jaded over the years,
Mm-hmm.
right? You get a present. I'm in my 50s now. I remember my 50th birthday, right? And I got some amazing presents. It's not the same as when I was 5 and I probably had just wanted that one toy, and I'm like, ripping that wrapping paper up and I just can't wait to get, you no longer have that. The experience has taken it out of you. I heard a fantastic quote today, which was talking about the difference between an optimist and a pessimist.
Mm.
And it is that a pessimist is basically an optimist with experience. And I was just like, yeah, that's exactly right. Experience basically says you should conform. Experience says you shouldn't be standing out from the crowd. You shouldn't be doing the things where people will question why you're doing it. You shouldn't be doing the things that you did as a kid because you're an adult now. And so I love thinking about going back to basics and trying to explain these concepts to people in that way. Not in the overly intellectualized. You heard my TED talk, and I try to be as graphic as I could be in terms of the imagery that I used, in terms of me focusing on my childhood and the childhood that we pretty much many of us had as kids, and that imagery hopefully hitting home. But even then, it was like when I got people involved at the TED talk, the whole audience,
Mm-hmm.
that's when it was like people were like, oh yes, now I get exactly what Darryl's he's talking about. And so just to finish that point, I like to think of a big cat, right? A jaguar, and jaguar is watching two young cubs kind of play fighting, and the big cat goes, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm never going to do that. I'm never going to, below me. No, it doesn't happen. It may not happen as frequently, but they will still play fight. They will still chase. They will still, wrestle with the younger cubs. They still have it there. It just may not be expressed as often, right? Because they've got other things to do with their lives, right? They can't just play fight all the time. But that's something we miss as adults. We just go, we're adults now.
Mm.
We don't play tag. We don't climb trees. We don't balance on railings. We don't spin around and around and around until we're dizzy and we fall and go, oh, I feel, why would you want to make yourself feel sick? Why do that twirling around in circles when I can just get a drink and feel sick instead, right? Why? Yeah. I want to feel like I've got a hangover. This is a better way of doing it than doing it by getting dizzy, right? So yeah. So I try to weave these kind of stories into convincing people
Mm-hmm.
to give play a chance,
Mm-hmm.
to try to bring more play into their lives. And it isn't just about physical activity, creating this playful attitude and approach, but it's certainly what helped me to get there and to become less serious and less kind of like bogged down with life, and
Yeah.
realizing There's a very interesting quote by a Dr. Stuart Brown, who wrote a book on play, and he says that the opposite of play is not work, which is what most of us would associate as the opposite of play being work. He said the opposite of play is depression, and that when you realize that's what depression is, being completely devoid of play, being completely devoid of any joy in your life, humor, comedy, art, flirtation, like all of these things that are inherently playful. When you have an absence of that, that's depression. So I try to tease out this playful spirit that we all have. That's part of our DNA. That doesn't have to be switched on. It's there. It's just there. It's like kind of dormant, but it's always there, just waiting to kick in. But you have to facilitate that process, especially when you're an adult.
Yeah, I feel when adults, it's not until the environment changes and it's more acceptable to play and to having a child, then you're accountable to play, and then you see it, and you see adults that start playing with their kid, or grandparents that are like playing, and it's like it's the most fun they have ever they can remember having. But because that environment's not like, you go to some parts of the world and play, and that even male flirtation and how we interact with each other, it's common. But, and as you know, in our culture, it's we don't measure it as a form of like being productive, or like, and that's what's happening in schools. It's like, oh well, what's the outcome there? It's like such an intrinsic creative, and creativity has got its own kind of challenges, much like play, and they're very linked, aren't they? But it's I was chatting with a friend talking about why is creativity just being such a it's just not being endorsed, looked at, like facilitated, and he was like, because you can't measure it, it's so hard to measure. And we have this just like the medical, which has essentially come from the same system. It's this very like materialistic way of viewing the world, and that if you can't measure it, then it's not valuable to us.
Yes, exactly. That's a really good point. And I suppose it's a cookie cutter, the widgets of the Industrial Revolution, right, are now the sort of processes of the digital age. We commoditize data and information and processes, and this is how you make this process efficient. And that sometimes removes the need for creativity, right? Just get it done. But I would say, even though culturally we may be very play deprived, and especially within such a short space of time, I would say, because now it's our kids now who are more play deprived than ever before, let alone the adults, right? Many adults did have a playful childhood, were able to free roam, were able to be able to do the things that the adults wouldn't have liked them doing. Now doesn't happen. Now kids have to do whatever. They're supervised. They're like almost imprisoned. Even though they've got more than ever before, they're doing more things than ever before, right? They have more choices available to them than ever before. But the core of free range play, unsupervised play, more kids are now being taught how to play. When I was a kid, being taught how to play by an adult when I was a kid was get outside and play.
Yeah, don't come back until it's dinner time.
Yeah, that was it. Go outside. What do you mean you don't know what you're going to be doing? Amuse yourself. Find something to do. Yeah. Find something that's going to keep you interested for a few hours. I don't want to see your face. Don't want to see your face. Now parents are like, we need to see your face all the time.
Yeah.
We need, and again, it doesn't have to be the extremes, right? Mm-hmm. There are some things about that which are better, right? There's more bonding between parents and kids. There's more time spent at home. that a lot of that is really fantastic. But there's also value in the separation, in the healthy separation of kids figuring out for themselves what life is about. And again, as adults, we only tend to focus on the one aspect of play, which is the fun, the laughter, the hilarity. Like, oh, it was just so much fun when I was a kid. And we forget the other part of play, which is like, oh, it was so morbid when I was a kid, right? What do you mean? The times that you're scared out of your mind because you're hiding, you're playing hide and seek, and you go, I don't want to be found, so I'm going to go in the smallest, darkest, like scariest part of the house or wherever to stay. You know what I mean? And you're in there thinking, I don't want to be found, but I kind of want to be found, right? Because I'm scared. And again, imagine how many activities do kids do now where they purposely are trying to create that level of fear. Do you know what I mean? Which isn't external. It's like an internal fear.
Yeah, because
of the games.
Exploring those edges and those, we collaborate, don't we? When we play, we collaborate with other people and we learn who we are. This is something I've been thinking about so much. Like, we learn who we are in relation to others.
Yes.
Like, you can't, you can go and soul seek, but live on your own for a bit. That will get to know you a little bit, but we do live in relationship with everyone else. So when you're kids, you collaborate with one another and you learn about what's too much, what's not enough, like those fears, those, like Peter Gray talks about this so much. Free to Learn. It's a phenomenal book. Yeah, it's phenomenal.
It's a phenomenal book. And I think there's a reason why active play figures so highly in my work, and why it isn't just lip service. It's a fundamental part of Primal Play, not just because it's in the title, but because it's necessary. It's a necessity, and I do believe that we're play deprived, and I do believe it's certainly devalued and underappreciated, because it's not as sexy as some of the other things that we speak about in the health and well-being space. You know, breathing. Wow. You know, I could have pretty much a PhD on breathing and how to breathe. And I'm like, do you know what? You know, I remember once I went to a seminar, and this person who knows a lot more about breathing than I, and going through all these different techniques. And I remember thinking to myself, like, he went through all these different techniques, and like, you don't really breathe properly in this, you do this, that, and the other. I remember thinking to myself, you know what? When I was being chased, you know, playing a game of tag, when I was chasing, right, I had no time to think about whether I was nasal breathing out through one nostril, like holding my breath for several seconds. I just know that my body was taking in as much oxygen as possible to help me maintain what I need to. Do you know what I mean? I was just like, I didn't have to think about it. It just kicked in. My body just did what it naturally had to do to supply myself with fuel. And I'm just like, it's so great that we've got these really elaborate, esoteric things that we can do now to improve our well-being. Like, you're not focusing on your breathing, you know, now focus on it. I'm like, maybe, again, the playful part of me says, why don't I just do it? Why don't I just find the activities that force me to take a deep breath, that force me to hyperventilate, that force me to go, hold on a second, I need to recover, right? I need to catch my breath. And all of those things happen naturally as a kid, right? Because and a lot of that was because you wanted it to happen. It's not like playing sport when you're being pushed to do something that sometimes you don't want to do, right? You want to chase and be chased, right? You want to be in the action, completely immersed in the action, and you want to be a spectator. You want to see what everyone else is doing. You want to make the rules up around the life that you're in. And like you said, your fantastic point about you learn about yourself and you learn about the people around you. I would also say you also learn about the world around you. You know, you learn about the interaction between people. You also learn about the interaction between humans and the environment that they're in. Whether it's, hopefully not, but, toxic, volatile, bullying, Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be doing that. I don't want to be recipient of that. And so we learn to self-regulate, right? The child bully, if you leave kids to themselves and there's a persistent bully in very young children, what happens naturally is there's some self-regulation within that group dynamic where that kid becomes ostracized and they realize, I don't have any friends. They realize I was too forceful. They realize if I want to maintain this group dynamic, I've got to learn to fit in.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have situations where parents or adults decide to influence the dynamic, oh, you're bullying, all right, Johnny, come, like punishment, blah blah. It doesn't work as well, interestingly. So now we've got all of these mechanisms in place around child safety, which again, fantastic that we do, but we've also lost some of the natural regulation that would also take place. So interestingly, even though we've got all of these safety mechanisms in place, we've got more childhood bullying, we've got more childhood suicides, more self-harm, more issues around discipline, childhood discipline and so on. So maybe we have to revisit some of the best of the past and utilize that with the best of the present.
I think what you're also saying is kids teach kids, and kids, when they're interacting with each other, they learn from each other. But what we've tend to do is the only way kids can learn is from adults telling kids. And
yes, exactly.
Like that approach in school, it's not that adults will teach kids how to do things, but if you leave kids to it, they learn from each other, and they learn from the situation, and that needs to happen, right?
That needs to happen. Yeah, that needs to happen. And they if you see play around the world, I remember seeing a documentary on kind of the aftermath, well, not even the aftermath, during the war in Syria, and the kids would, just like, I don't know, when I was a kid, you played doctors and nurses, you'd pretend to, you might pretend to be Action Man or something like, what they would do is they would pretty much do what they would see around them. So part of their games would be doing things like, the sirens have gone off. We've got to go to shelter. So they would play games. They would mimic a siren. They would rush down certain routes to get into the bomb shelters. They would use that as a game. And so not only were they modeling the world around them, but it was also something that was therapeutic for them. It was a way of them making sense of the world around them. So even though it's horrendous that they have to do that, but it's their way of coping at the same time. And it's interesting that those kids who don't have access to therapy, child therapy, or anything of that description during those times, are incredibly resilient, even though they're being exposed to what's happening around them through play. And when you stop kids playing, unfortunately, they don't have this kind of release mechanism, this kind of safety valve mechanism. It's just like trauma, and that's it. So one of the other games, one of the other things that they would do is they would seek out like burnt out buses, and they would play games within the, and you're kind of thinking, oh my goodness, how traumatic would that be? You're looking at your school bus that you would be taking to school every day, which is now just like basically a shell and burnt out, and you choose. There's this affinity, right? You kind of recognize it for what it was, but you also recognize it for what it is. Talk about it.
It's an amazing point, because something we often don't think about, but how the intelligence of children, and shifting that perception of like what is coping, or what is a protection mechanism or a
Yeah.
habit that we've built up. Like kids, when you dive into inner child work, attachment theory and all this stuff, it's like,
Mm.
wow, a
Mm.
child at that age, before they're even able to, maybe not, they've just started walking, or what, they're not there yet in terms of
Yeah.
feeding themselves or doing anything really to keep themselves alive. They're still dependent, but what they can do psychologically is cope and use like an innate tool to,
Yes. Yes.
to disassociate maybe from not feeling certain emotions, or whatever caregiver is not giving them exactly what they need emotionally. They have ways in which they can cope and then continue to live like without, like, just separating themselves from it, and then they're still reliant on it. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
what comes up for me, I can't remember I can't remember much about the film, but City of God, when I'm sure there's loads of kids just playing around in hell on earth.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Fascinating film.
Yeah. It's a fascinating film, and it's yeah. Play is play is the work of childhood. That's another fantastic quote. I can't remember who that's attributed to, but I think it's Fred Rogers in the
Mm-hmm.
US.
Okay.
Play is the work of childhood, and that's because to a child,
Yeah.
play is really serious.
Fundamental. Yeah. To
So
existence.
it isn't just about ha 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 ha. Let's have some fun. It's also like, let's be serious. Let's try to figure out the problems of the world that we have no idea about, but in our imagination we do. So I will operate and cut into you, and remove your heart and go, ooh, boom, 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 look at it, it's beating in my, and then I'm gonna put it back in and sew you up, and you're all well and healthy. Like kids will go through this narrative throughout their play, and oftentimes adults won't be around. Adults will have no idea that those sort of games are happening when they.
Yeah.
But it's that's how they see the world, right? They see the world and they go, oh, okay, how can I mimic that? How can I model that? How can I repeat that in my game playing? How can I pretend to be mom going off to work and wearing her shoes and getting dressed, and me going through that process, pretending to go through that process, and you can pretend to be the kid being taken to school. I pretend to be the adult, and we'll go. I'll take you to school. That's
Yeah.
what play is also about. And there's nothing necessarily inherently fun about that process. They may not walk to school. Hey, let's skip on the way to school. They might take it really seriously. Yeah, we're walking to school. Stop it. I told you. They'll model the world around them,
Yeah.
and hopefully it's positively reinforced what they're able to model. Right, that's what we would want for all children. Unfortunately, it isn't always the case, but recognizing and acknowledging how important play is for them, and by stripping our kids playtime and recess time, and seeing that kids' results are getting more academically worse, and the places around the world where they go, maybe we're working our kids too hard, forcing them to read at sort of 4 years old and 5 years old, where there's other parts of the world where they don't start reading till they say 7 or 8 because they're spending more time playing. Their results are just as good, if not, and usually far better academically, even though they've had less education time, shorter school hours. It's the results are out there for us to see in countries like this, but we kind of go, oh, it's different there. It wouldn't work here. Our solution is more hours, more after school clubs. We need to change.
The more, I don't like the word, but progressive people are noticing this and changing accordingly, and that's why a lot of schools are really suffering, because all the teachers that get this stuff and get it, that they are moving to homeschooling, they are moving to Montessori, they are moving to places of work which nourish and actually, you know, improve kids' quality of life. Just on that, I think also because this kind of area that we've tapped into here is really fascinating, because you could look through it as like the archetypes, the like collective unconscious of children. Like I love archetype work, and like the caregiver in a child that, you know, looks after a baby before, you know, it's and the villain and the hero and the magician and the sage, or like all of these archetypes could really, you can just see it being played out before these kids have, you know, it's something that's unconscious within like our thread of humanity.
That's a fantastic point. It is, and that's why you can see, you know, and that's why parents of twins, you know, identical twins, they can see those differences, right? Very, very early on, those differences in personality, and you go, hold on a second, their DNA is identical, right? They've had very similar life experiences, but yet there's something about the world around them that molds them differently, right? And we can perceive that in other humans, and they can perceive that as well. You know, like I think before babies can see, when babies are still seeing like not much in terms of form, you know, just kind of like blobs in front of their eyes, they can still make out, you know, certain features to detect if a human is happy, you know, or pleased to see them, or, you know, comforting. I mean, it's incredible how much we just don't know, right? We assume, oh well, they can't fully see, so does it really matter, right? But to that baby, they're like, it freaking matters, because I'm picking up all this information that I will lose at a certain time once I gain full eyesight, right? And I can, and once we gain conversation, I'll rely less on body language cues, because I don't need that anymore. It's, you know, there's some atrophy there. Don't need it. Get rid of it. Efficiency. It's all about efficiency, right?
It is.
So it's fascinating, and you know, trying to drive this home on the importance of this to parents, to parents of children who need to be playing more, to adults who maybe didn't play very much as kids, and realizing they're missing out. Like, oh my, you did that as a kid? Yeah. Oh, I didn't have that childhood, and I wish I had. Is there anything I can do now to recreate this?
Yeah, I had Josie Taylor on, who's a positive parenting coach. Fascinating podcast all about raising children, and loads of amazing takeaways from that. Got some great feedback on. But one of the things she did say was, what did you do as a kid that you're not allowing your kids to do? Like,
perfect.
In a positive way, obviously.
In a positive way, yeah.
What things that benefited you are you not allowing your kids to do? And it was like, oh yeah, interesting.
I'm glad you said the positive benefit, because, you know, I'd put like pencils inside, you know, electric sockets or whatever, right? So I certainly wouldn't allow my kids to do that. But abandoned railways. I'm not so sure about that. So it is a tricky one, because I know some of those experiences really made me, they made me who I am today, and most of the best play experiences for me and for many kids of my generation were the risky ones. Unfortunately, they were where it was adventurous, where they weren't exactly safe. That's why we had, you know, back in the early 70s into the early 80s, they had these public service announcements all the time around children's programs, all of the time, talking about things like, you know, oh, you know, you just see a 2-minute advertisement, and there's some kids, they're walking, you know, got their fishing rods, and they're walking down to like the little lake or something like that. You know, oh no, you know, Where's Jamie? Oh my gosh, he's in, he's in the lake, he's drowning. And, horrendous, or, kids walking, like, hey, should we go across the train track because it's quicker that way? No, I don't think you should. Oh, come on, let's go. And then there's like, obviously, the kids are dead, right? So
yeah. It's interesting because if you told me that happened yesterday, I'd be like, oh God, but then a year goes by and you tell this same story and I laugh and you laugh with me. And it's like, it's so interesting how these experiences over time they change.
You were kind of told about the reality of the world around you. Like the adults knew you were going to be on your own with your peers, either on your own, or with your peers, and you'd have to make decisions for yourselves. So it's not good to go into a electrical substation to play. Not a great idea, right? So we need to educate children who are adventurous, who do want to explore and go, oh, what's that? That looks really great. What's that? What's that? Like lightning symbol. That looks great. Let's go and have a look. Right. So there had to be this level of education to ensure children were streetwise enough, children were knowledgeable enough to go, and interestingly, many kids abided by those common sense rules. But there were some kids now, it's like if you didn't have those extra railings and like more railings and barbed wire, right? That's what they need to go, danger. They need to be told, right? They need to be things need to be fenced off for them to become aware that these things are dangerous. So there's a whole, there's a huge movement about raising free range kids. And there's a recent documentary it was in the news sort of a week and a half ago about a Japanese children's show.
Okay.
Where they're like, how young, what's the youngest age of kids who can basically do independent things like going to the shops and like buying some grocery. And they've got like these toddlers, they've got like 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds who are like going to school by themselves, taking public transport, and they're following them, so they're safe, right? But and of course, many people are alarmed, going, "Oh my goodness, you're letting like a 2-year-old cross busy streets." It's pretty shocking, kind of reality TV. But what's really interesting about that is kids not much older than them are doing those things, are being sent out to the shops. Go to the shops and get such and such and such. Yeah, and it's a mile away, right? Unsupervised. Kids, very young kids, are going to school, are getting the metro by themselves, and those things are happening. And then when I think to myself, oh my gosh, isn't that really shocking? Like 5-6 years old doing that sort of thing. And I remember my childhood. My parents took me to school day one. Right, we walk down here, we walk across the street. Wait. Hopefully the dinner, the lollipop lady or whatever is going to be there. Hopefully, if they are, you wait here, but we'll wait for them to take you across the road. We walk a bit more, we walk around the corner. School, day one. Oh, don't leave me alone. Sorry, it's school. Okay, I'm crying. Day two. You taking me to school? No, school. See, bye. Go to school. So that was very typical. For kids of my age. There was no, social services weren't called because a 5-year-old was walking to school on their own.
Yeah.
when I was a kid. So I don't know. There's something about it which was.
Yeah, I think what we tend to do as well is we put these like, you put these kind of parameters around like certain age they should be reading, certain age they should be walking to school, and it's like, well, kids are different.
Yes.
I might let one kid earlier. Well, you're not quite ready yet. We need to do some more walks because you've got ADHD symptoms, and you're going and you forget what time it is, and you don't stick to the same route you like to explore. I don't know. Just need a few more weeks. but
Yeah.
it's like you cannot put these brackets around. But anyway, I want to respect your time. Also, I think we've touched on some amazing things. One thing I'd like to kind of finish on would be some real like engaging, perhaps practical takeaways of like how we can re-engage with our play. And maybe it's just I heard this thing the other day. I think it was Gray Cook. You familiar with Gray Cook?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, FMS, amazing. And he talked about you can hack your answer, but you have to grow your solution because we are biological and we have to, grow with it. So I really like that.
I
Like
love that.
I still like hacks. I think it's, everyone knows what you mean.
Yeah.
We can
Yeah.
kind of, sit on the ground more, put a pull-up bar in your door every time you pass it. Like all these kind of things, how we can engage and play. No, don't count your reps and just play with it, breathe into
Yeah.
it. So anything that you could, some takeaways for people, I think.
Yeah. So the first is because I've quoted a lot of people today, but I'm going to quote myself.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of my definition of play,
Yeah.
is that play is not the activity, it's the attitude that you have.
Mm-hmm.
And so when many people are thinking about, oh, I want to become more playful, they think about what they deem to be playful activities, and that's what they do. So they go, oh, you know what? If I go outside barefoot and I swing a kettlebell outside, I'm playing, right? And there may be nothing playful about it whatsoever. Just because you're outside, just because you're even climbing a tree, doesn't make it playful. It's the approach you have, it's the mindset you have. So once you establish what you want your mindset to be around activities that you wish to be playful, it's job done. It takes a long time to get there. But
Mm-hmm.
once you do, anything you do can become playful. The most mundane, the horrendous of tasks or chores can be something where you go, this is actually fantastic. This feels good. I'm enjoying myself. I'm expressing myself. I'm taking delight in what's possible for me to do at this time. So that would be the first. The second is for those who really struggle to become more playful, is to think of your 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old self, 9-year-old self, whatever you feel was the pinnacle, the epitome of play for you throughout your life as a youngster. Think of that child and ask them, what would you love to do right now? What would you love to do right now? What game would you love to play right now?
Mm-hmm.
And find a way to play that game as an adult. So for me, I play a game called Primal Play Tag. You can find that game on my website, primalplay.com. Because when I asked myself that question, tag was probably it. I wanted any excuse, any opportunity to play tag anytime. You'd just be walking down the corridor at school like, tag, I used to love the bobbing and weaving and like, you don't realize you're still it and you've got to wait until the end of the school and somebody tag, oh no. So I was like, that's me. Tag was it for me. How can I recreate this as an adult? So for yourselves, ask yourself that question. What was the most playful activity for me as a kid? How can I recreate that as an adult? If you've got kids, great. Maybe it's introducing it to them. If you haven't got kids, it's a case of you saying, I want to speak to my inner child and make it happen. And the third and final point is just recognize that many of us are play deprived and many of us suffer the harmful impacts of play deprivation, significant danger to our personal health. And by recognizing that we're play deprived, by recognizing that we have to take steps to reduce the amount of play deprivation, you'll be able to seek out play opportunities. And you'll be able to seek out the best opportunities because you want to optimize the time that you have in order to seek out playful endeavors. Mm-hmm. So those would be my top 3 pointers for kind of embracing your playful spirit.
Nice, yeah, very well put. I'd also say if you haven't got kids, borrow someone else's, because
Yeah.
because kids love to play, and parents love to give their kids to people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I also
Free.
get. I looked after my brother's dog for a couple of months, start of the year, and that shifted so much into. Well, at first I was like observing, living with a dog. I had never lived
Mm,
with a dog before, and like the way the dog shifted states and played with himself, and like it was just amazing just to observe. But going
yeah.
out and playing with the dog, like that is such a great way to reconnect with it all.
Yeah, it's a very good. That's a fantastic point. Yeah,
Mm.
we see play all around us, and we need to spectate less, and we need to participate more. That's probably my fourth point. Actually,
Mm-hmm.
is think about, as humans, the amount of people who spectate at, in sports, the
Mm.
millions, the billions around the world who watch the Olympics, who watch the Premier League, basketball, whatever it is, billions of people. And then think about those who actually do the sport, who actually participate, a small fraction of the spectatorship, right? And then think about the dogs you see in your local park, and if they could speak, and how many of them would say, "Hey, owner, can you just let me, can you let me just sit here so I can watch the other dogs playing?" Wouldn't happen, right? Oh my gosh, look how graceful those dogs are. Look how high that one could jump. Look how fast that one could run. Wouldn't happen, right? They're like, get me off this, get me off the lead, get me.
Yeah, the only
Like,
way they're watching them is on a lead
yeah, yeah. They want
strapped
to.
to you.
They're like, oh, I want to go. I want to get involved. I
Mm.
want to join in. So yeah, you've got to find that. You've got to find that find what it takes for you to go, get me off this lead.
Mm.
I want to join in. I want to do what they're doing. I want to love what they're doing in terms of active play. So yeah, I think I'll probably give, that's probably five now, right? So I've
It's good,
probably
man.
I've
I'm
gone
sure you
over
could
a
keep
couple of
going as
bonuses.
well. Yeah, it's a powerful image of like, yeah, let me off that lead. And yeah, I remember it dinner time, lunchtime at school. I was like, trainings were on under the desk before the bell was gone, and it was like, I'm so like just so much energy that I just want to release because I can't wait to
Yeah,
play football or can't
yeah,
wait to just run around and score those goals. And yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Right. Do you want to let's direct anyone to perhaps your book or anything you're got coming up?
Yeah, so I have a book, best-selling book called Animal Moves, which explores why humans should move more like the animals they are.
Mm-hmm.
I've recently released a children's version, a children's picture book called My First Animal Moves, and it really just has a story around a young kid who would rather play computer games and watch TV and to go outside and play, and it just explores his relationship with movement and his parents, and has a really nice way of letting kids know that there's something else you can do with your time than just having lots of screen time. My website is called primalplay.com. I have lots of research there, lots of really good blog posts discussing many of the topics we discussed today: the evolutionary biology, the play psychology, the exercise physiology, lots of videos, free downloads. And I also have a set of products as well, a series of products called the Animal Moves decks, which are like exercise or movement
Yeah, I love
cards. I
it.
don't know.
Love them when I saw them.
Thank you.
I think they're out of stock on the website.
Yeah, a lot of them are out of stock.
Mm,
I'm waiting for the to stock to levels to be replenished.
sure.
But yeah, so there's still a few available, but yeah, there'll be stock available in the very near future. But yeah, they just another great way just to encourage people to play a bit more, using some
Yeah.
like analog technology. Like it's like
Uh-huh.
doesn't have to be digital.
Yeah, and you're almost playing with the fact that you're playing, like you're playing with movement, but you're playing that. It's like you could
Yeah,
play the
yeah,
deck with someone,
yeah,
but
exactly. Yeah, exactly. You can play so many games with around movement, right?
Yeah.
To make it a little bit more interesting and engaging. It doesn't have to be punishing and grueling and kind of punitive measures like, oh, let's get these reps done. Let's go 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 go. It can be like, yeah, let's try something out. I haven't done this before. How doesn't matter how difficult it's going to be. The challenge is what is the challenge is what the focus is. The confusion, that's where the growth happens, right? It's not about I was able to achieve it. It's about let me just try something out. So yeah, that's what those cards are all about.
Yeah, love it, man. Thanks for coming on. It's been an absolute joy. Knew it would be. So yeah, I'd love to keep in touch and keep checking in and hopefully have back on the future. There's so many avenues we can explore.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love the mission and love what you stand for. It's really needed and it's something it's innate within us all and it's so fundamental to being human. It's just we need to be talking about it more.
For sure.
It needs to be the conversation needs to be kept up. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, thanks very much for the invitation, and it's been a real pleasure chatting to you, Chris. And I look forward to catching up again soon. Maybe getting outside and playing.
Yes, definitely that.
All right.
Nice, man.
Cheers.
Well done for making it to the finish line of this podcast. Really hope you found this valuable. Please hit that subscribe button if you did so. Have a little look in the description. Lots of links on Darryl's resources, people mentioned. Check out his TED Talk and his website. So other than that, I wish you a good day and I'll speak to you soon.